Good morning, dear students. I am Professor Sanjay Flambe, Sri Sundagajan Mahavidyalaya Krada, Taluka Zankhed District, Ahmednagar. In today's lecture, we are going to see the poem La Belle Dame Sans Merci by John Keats. First of all, we will see the biographical sketch of the poet John Keats in brief. John Keats was born in 1795 and has died on 1821. If we can look at his lifespan, he is a very short-lived poet. He has lived only for 26 years. He is an apothecary apprentice and abandoned his medical profession to become a poet of beauty and verbal felicity. Before becoming a poet of reputation, John Keats has been worked in the medical profession. Later on, he left that profession to become the poet of beauty and verbal felicity. His imagery is colorful and sensuous, and his word paintings are remarkable. The imagery which he has been used in his poems is colorful. Whatever the images that he has been used are colorful and sensuous, and the words are remarkable. Influenced by Spenser, Shakespeare, and Milton, Keats' poetry blends the romantic with the philosophical. As a poet, he has been influenced by the poets of or the literary artists of the previous generations, such as Keats has had the influence of Spenser, Shakespeare, and Milton. His poetry blends the romantic with the philosophical. When we go through his poems, there is a blend of romantic and philosophical aspects in his poetry. Keats' poems were panned by critics during his lifetime, but his reputation as a poet grew steadily after his death with the increasing popularity of Romanticism. When the poet was alive, his poetry was criticized by the critics of his time, but after the demise of the poet, his fame as a poet has been rapidly increased. He is now seen as a key figure of the Romantic movement in English literature. Later on, John Keats became one of the most popular figure of the age of the Romanticism, along with the poets such as S.T. Coleridge, William Wordsworth, P.B. Shelley, Lord Byron, etc. His works have greatly influenced later writers, and his letters and poems are still very popular today and studied in detail by students of literature. John Keats is primarily a poet, and as a poet, his poems have tremendously influenced the writers or the poets of the latter generation, and his letters and poems are very popular even today, and these poems and letters have been studied by the students of modern generation in our generation also. Keats is well known for his famous odes such as Ode on a Grecian Earl, Ode to a Nightingale, to Atumon, and his longer poems such as Lamia and the Eve of Saint Agnes. As a poet, John Keats is a voluminous writer. He has written many poems as well as he has written few letters. This is the short biographical sketch of the poet John Keats. Now we will talk about here about the poem La Belle Dame Sans Merci is the poem composed by John Keats in the year 1918. This poem is based on a French song and is written in the form of ballad. The source of this poem is a French song, and the form employed here in this poem by the poet John Keats is a ballad. Despite the beguiling simplicity of its surface narrative, the poem is open to many interpretations. Poem can be interpreted in many ways apart from its surface meaning. There is a lot of mystery and enigma in the portrayal of the story. The poet has used mystery and enigma in portraying the characters, the situation, the landscape, the setting here in this poem. The knight who is found on top of the hillside has a story to tell. In this poem, a knight has been portrayed by the poet and he has to tell a story. This is the theme of this poem. The story is of how he was trapped by a wicked maiden who took him to her arbor and lulled him to sleep. There is a mystery, as I earlier said you. A knight has been taken by a maiden to her arbor and she has lulled her to the sleep. Means a maiden took the knight to her arbor and there she lulled her so that he can sleep there. She is aptly called La Belle Dame Sans Merci, as she seems to be one without mercy. So, this maiden lady is called La Belle Dame Sans Merci, means that this maiden has no mercy at all. And when he wakes up from his sleep, he finds himself all alone on the hillside. When that night sleeps, when that night wakes up from that long sleep, he finds himself alone on that hillside. That is why he is found all alone and palely loitering. And when he wakes up from the sleep, he is wandering palely on that hillside. There is a lot left to the reader's imagination to piece together. So, there are multiple meanings the readers can draw from this poem, but the overall impression is that the maiden without mercy had influenced the knight in some way, either before or during his slumber. But when we go through the poem thoroughly, we got the impression that the maiden, which has taken the knight to her arbor and lulled him there, whatever the knight has been experienced during that sleep is the story of this poem. The poem is said to be a record of Keats' experience of love. Now, another aspect about this poem is that the poem is the experience of Keats' own love. It conveys a note of betrayal, and this poem conveys the failure of love in John Keats' own life. The loss of freedom that goes along with love is clearly hinted at. At the same time, when we love somebody, at that time we lose our freedom. And that is what the poet has tried to express through this poem. This is about the poet La Belle Dame Sans Merci by John Keats, and about the poem. In our next lecture, we will go through the poem. Thank you for being with me. Keep watching the lectures which I am going to post on the regular basis. Thank you for being with me.